Marshall Mountain may be one of the most recognizable lost ski areas in the United States. Certainly, it's rooted in a steep history dating all the way back to the late 1930s. This video is going to be quite long, so I won't waste much time here. Instead, let's jump right into the deep history of Marshall Mountain. The history of skiing at Marshall Mountain dates all the way back to the late 1930s. In the early 30s, groups of skiers would make the trek up to Marshall Mountain to ski for the day, then hike back down. By 1937, a run had been cut on the present-day ski hill site, and the first rope to lift was installed. In 1941, a permanent road up to Marshall Bowl was proposed. Though the road was not constructed until 1951, multiple ski runs were cleared, and a small warming hut was built. In 1951, the long-proposed road was finally built. The ski area was renamed to Marshall Canyon, and a second rope tow was added in 1952, which serviced both beginner and intermediate terrain. In 1956, Cy and Velma Green purchased Marshall Canyon. They immediately began improving the mountain, which included lengthening the rope tows, enlarging the parking lot, and renaming the mountain to Marshall Ski Area. By 1958, the mountain boasted 5 rope tow lifts. The mountain also started the long-standing tradition of night skiing in 1959. From the start, Marshall Ski Area was very popular with families and beginner skiers. A proper ski lodge was built in 1964, and a Poma lift was installed in 1965. This lift replaced several lower mountain rope tows and was financed through a $36,000 loan. This loan was fully repaid in 1969. All in all, the 1960s were a period of rapid growth for the mountain. The Greens invested in upgraded night lighting, cut new trails, expanded the lodge, and constructed an upper mountain T-bar lift in 1969. This T-bar nearly doubled the vertical drop of the mountain and opened up many new runs. Marshall Ski Area was very community-oriented and hosted many events including summer camps, winter carnivals, and women's fashion shows. As Cy Green had another day job, Velma Green managed the day-to-day operations at Marshall Ski Area. The Greens were well respected in Missoula, and Velma Green even served on the tramway board in 1971. Though some skiers bemoaned the way the resort operated, many others praised the down-to-earth atmosphere of the mountain and the Greens. By 1971, the Greens had invested in several snowmaking guns that would operate at Marshall. In 1972, recognizing how beginner skiers found it extremely difficult to ride the Poma, the Greens invested in a new Thiokol triple chair on the lower mountain. The Platter remained standing and was occasionally used on busy days, though it was completely removed a few years later. The triple chair truly brought in a new era of skiing at Marshall Mountain. The resort had its best season ever in 1972, recording over 33,000 skier visits. This sharply contrasted with Missoula Snow Bowl, which had never broken even and only did so in 1978. Marshall continued to host many community programs and events, along with cutting new trails and investing in more snowmaking and lighting equipment throughout the 1970s. Throughout the life of the mountain, the narrow access road became a big issue. Since the city of Missoula did not plow it, it was up to the Greens to do so, which often led to the mountain being closed for days after a significant snowstorm until the entire road could be plowed. While the 1976-77 ski season was horrible, the 1977-78 ski season was one of the best for both Marshall Mountain and Montana Snow Bowl. After that year, Marshall experienced several poor snow years, due in part to warm Chinooks and the low elevation of the mountain. This prompted the Greens to invest further into new snowmaking technology to try and offset the poor snow years. In 1983, Velma and Cy Green sold Marshall Mountain to Bill Barrier. The Greens had a long run at Marshall and simply wanted to retire. Velma Green passed away 1 year later in 1984. The new ownership of Marshall Ski Area continued to build out the mountain, clearing new runs and developing snowmaking. The upgraded snowmaking saved the mountain for the 1985-86 season, where there was virtually no natural snow. In 1986, Bill Barrier had announced intentions to expand Marshall's skiable terrain in the upper mountain. To do so, he needed investor money. So, Barrier put the ski area up on the market for $550,000 in hopes of finding an investor to help him develop the mountain. In 1987, Ben Lane, the former owner of Montana Snowbowl, announced that he had purchased the ski area from Bill Barrier. Under Ben Lane, Snowbowl and Marshall began offering a joint seasons pass, which continued for a few years. Lane initially continued expanding the night skiing footprint and cut several new runs on Marshall. Marshall's ski area also constructed a super pipe in 1990, which was a huge success and brought in many snowboarders to Marshall Mountain. In 1993, a lift attendant at Marshall's ski area was left stranded overnight on the chairlift during a ride down. The attendant eventually ended up jumping off the chairlift at 2 a.m, causing back injuries. Shortly after this incident, the Montana Tramway Board ordered a temporary closure of the mountain until safety issues could be resolved. One board member even described the way the mountain operated as helter-skelter. Ben Lane did not comply with the Tramway Board's ruling, instead deciding to permanently shutter the mountain. As quoted from Lane, "They meant to give me a slap on the wrist, but instead they cut the wrist off. So I'm shutting down." Lane indicated that he would consider selling or leasing the operation if an opportunity arose. And a few months later, an opportunity arose. Ben Lane sold the mountain to Bruce and Kim Doring, a local Missoulan family. The Dorings immediately renamed the mountain from Marshall Ski Area to Marshall Mountain and worked hard to appease the Tramway Board. By December of 1993, the mountain had been given the okay to open, to which it did to much local fanfare. The mountain continued to host summer camps, weddings, and other activities, even building a waterslide in the summer on the Bunny Hill. The Dorings operated Marshall Mountain throughout the 1990s without much change. By 1998, Bruce Doring indicated that the only way Marshall Mountain could survive was to expand further up the mountain. In 1999, Bruce Doring secured U.S. Forest Service expansion approval and purchased the used Opry Vu double chair from Jackson Hole. The chairlift was staged in the parking lot, ready for immediate install. The new lift line and trails were also cleared. The only thing that held Bruce Doring back was funding. The lift was not installed that year, nor the next year. However, a new terrain park opened up in 2000. The 2001 to 2002 ski season was really bad, with warm temperatures and little natural snow. It was so bad that Marshall Mountain did not pay payroll tax to the IRS and was seized in February of 2002. Despite this, the Dorings were still hopeful that something could be sorted out and remained optimistic to the public in a humorous way. In May of 2002, Marshall Mountain was sold at auction to Vision Properties of Provo, Utah, for $144,000. The Dorings had 180 days to buy back the mountain from Vision Properties. The Dorings listed Marshall Mountain on eBay for sale, though later that year began filing for Chapter 11 federal bankruptcy. The Dorings aimed to operate the mountain that winter under the bankruptcy court. Marshall Mountain operated for the 2002 to 2003 ski season. However, after that year, Bruce Doring announced that the ski operations would remain closed indefinitely. The mountain would still be available for weddings, banquets, concerts, or conferences. Doring stated that the mountain could not compete with its competitors and was not financially viable as a ski resort. Initially, there was some interest in a private party operating the ski area, which included the city of Missoula. However, nothing ever came of these offers. Bruce Doring continued to rent out the lodge for events and continued to dream of the ski area reopening. The Upper Mountain terrain was initially leased to Marshall Mountain by a timber company, but in 2015, it was sold to a nature conservancy group who donated the land to the Five Valleys Land Trust. The base area, owned by the Dorings, was put up for sale in 2015, though public access was still granted. In 2021, the base of the mountain was almost sold to a couple who intended to build a home on the land, closing it to all public access. There was much public outcry over this, leading to two local couples to purchase the land for $2.16 million, with the intention to preserve public access. In 2023, the city of Missoula announced that they were close to purchasing the base area parcel for $1.8 million, the Upper Five Valleys Land Trust parcel, and a third parcel. This will create a 480-acre park, which will be managed by the city's Recreational Parks Department. The chairlift has already been removed, and the lodge will likely be removed soon. Marshall Mountain will continue to be available for backcountry skiing, and perhaps might even install a carpet in the future. To discuss the topography of Marshall Mountain, please welcome Ben Eminger, who's actually skied Marshall Mountain when it was still open.
Thanks for having me back, Skier 72. Marshall Mountain was located on a north-facing slope and had a small 480 skiable acres with roughly 1,376 feet of vertical rise, which extended to the top of the future expansion area, would have been 1,936 feet of vertical rise, and would have added a few hundred acres. The mountain was far best suited to intermediate skiers and boarders, as most of the main runs off the mountain were blue. I skied Marshall Mountain twice, once in the spring of 2002, when I was very young. Little did I realize that would have been its last spring, and once again in 2019 when I hiked it with some friends. To outline the skiing experience, I'll be building off of both of those visits. The handle toe area at the base is exactly what you would expect. A nearly flat green run for never ever skiers or boarders. The greens to the lookers right, skiers left of the triple chair were a bit deceptive as they were labeled as greens on the map but skied more akin to Marshall's wide open blue runs. Nonetheless, there was still a very obvious beginner's way down off the triple that weaved in and out of the trees on skiers' left. My guess is they were probably summer access roads. The lone green off the top of the T-bar was much more beginner suited than the runs below on the triple chair. Bringing us to blues, this is where Marshall Mountain really stood out. Two of the three main blues off the triple and one of the two blues off the T-bar were very wide and were usually groomed very well, while the two remaining main blues off of both of those lifts served some excellent powder runs, as I found in my 2019 visit. The remaining smaller blues found around the resort were very small but very fun, and it was a guessing game if they were ever groomed or not. There was really only one long and steep black run, which was located off the T-bar on the edge of the future expansion area, connecting to some of the blues off of skiers right of the triple. These then branched into two more black options to take you back down to the base. I found out during this visit as well that there were two more blacks off in the run cluster, so to speak, off of skiers left of the triple chair. Overall, Marshall Mountain skied very, very well, and it skied very similarly to the Southern Comfort area of Big Sky or the Alpine Powder Park area of Bridger Bowl. I really wish it could have survived, because had it been able to expand, it really would have given the skiers of Missoula another option opposed to Montana Snowbowl, and if they were able to run a single high-speed quad or six to the top of the expansion area from the base area, that would have just been the icing on the cake. Thank you for having me again, Skier 72. We now return to you with our regularly scheduled program.
The story of Marshall Mountain is interesting. For many years, it was one of the key cornerstones of the community, hosting countless events and teaching countless people how to ski. While I'm sad that Marshall Mountain could not continue as a lift-served mountain, I'm happy that a long-term plan is in place and that public access will be preserved at Marshall Mountain. Thanks again to Ben Eminger for breaking down the topography of Marshall Mountain. Please be sure to subscribe to his channel. And thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe. And until next time, this is Skier 72.